G'day and welcome to a little chat about Space Engineers 2. Because we've been getting teasers on V-Rage 3 and what we all assumed would be Space Engineers 2 for a long while now, especially if you include the stuff that was shown on Twitter by Jan. So I thought I'd finally take a look at them and talk about the things I've seen that make me excited about Space Engineers 2, and some of the things that I've seen that make me feel like we're going to be playing the original for a while yet. Getting the obvious out of the way, the grid size is going to be fantastic for doing detailed designs. Obviously, it's smaller, but it's particularly going to be useful when we want to make a decorative thing that doesn't yet have its own block. What I mean by this is things like tables and desks and that sort of stuff that is fairly square by default, or at least can have one large flat surface. You can make those even if they haven't added that block properly yet. You can also use these blocks in ways to make them look like they are something else. The example that jumps to mind from the original game is that we've seen people make things that look like kitchens before we had the kitchen blocks in the DLC. And having a smaller grid size, there's going to be even more opportunity for doing that. As to something I hope we'll be able to do with this grid size, but I haven't seen any evidence for yet, is making teeny weeny little drones. Functional grids that are really small. All the thrusters that I've seen in the trailer so far have been the sizes that we're accustomed to. 50 centimeter 2x1 cubes or larger. But if we're able to get 25 centimeter cube 2x1s, even if they're 2x1s, not 1x1s, but if we're able to get ones that size, and power sources that go with that, and antennas that go with that, and remote controls that go with that, or even not remote controls. If we could even have a seat on it, you can make yourself a little flying chair that can go through doors. You can make yourself, or if we got wheels, you can make yourself a little wheelchair. I think being able to do some of that stuff will hopefully be enough of a cool concept that Keen would actually take it on and do it, but we haven't seen any evidence of it, so I'm hopeful. But you know, you got to take hope with a grain of salt, especially if you're going to be handing over cash for it. Now, on the topic of things not yet delivered but which have been sort of teased earlier on, the big obvious one is water, and it's kind of conspicuous in its absence from any of the trailers. Same with planets, and same with any sort of survival mechanic. We've had some showing of survival mechanic in the sense that we've got a couple of blocks that really don't make sense in a creative world, that being the refinery and the assembler. But other than that, there's not really any evidence of survival being approached as yet. The building style that they've shown is all very much creative mode. Plop a block, snap, it exists. I'm hopeful that we haven't seen these things because they're not quite ready yet to be shown, and not that they've been pushed to the side and said, no, we're not going to put these in the game unless X, Y, or Z changes. I hope they're still actively working on that. And I mean, we're never really going to know until we either get it or we don't, I suppose. But I am desperate for them to give us some more info on that side of things, just more so I can set my expectations to something realistic. Because yes, right now, because of all those water things we've seen, my head is filled with dams and water wheels and hopes that the water system could be applied to atmospherics for pressurizing our ships and bases, or poisoning us with radioactive gases coming out of the reactor that's damaged, or whatever else. Which, by the way, do not expect any of those things. I don't expect them. But that's what my head's getting filled with, because I don't know. Enough with the hopes, let's talk about things we've actually seen that have me genuinely excited. They're almost entirely usability things, which you should all expect from me by now. Basically, being able to take a blueprint or copy a section of a build and expand that selection area, modify the selection area while it's locked to the grid that you're trying to copy. That's very powerful compared to what we have now. That gives us a capability that is really a big pain to do in the current version of the game. You have to copy your whole grid, slice out the bit you want, copy that, put it into the thing. So even in creative mode, that's a fair bit of work. I hope that we still have to use a projector and things like that in survival mode, but I also hope that we can place down some sort of build state. If we've got enough inventory, enough of the items in our inventory, place down a build state of these sections that we've created blueprints of. The idea of being able to build a cool looking kitchen or a cool looking corridor or a cool looking hangar section, select that, make a blueprint of it, and being able to then use that blueprint both in creative and survival in the future, and it includes all those tiny little blocks, that's great. Especially with the way that they showed how you would connect it to the existing blocks that are there. Those highlights with showing where you've got connection, where you don't, both for the smaller armor blocks, but also for the larger blocks that don't have the 25 centimeter cube size, that are bigger than that. The catwalks, where it shows where they've got attachment points, where your thing that you're going to stick on there is actually connecting. Their UI for that is much more clearly communicating what's going on there, and that's great. I'm really happy to see that they've done that, because I think it's going to make a big difference with how quickly we can build. As this small grid size, it really worries me about how long it's going to take us to build something. It's not very much fun welding up lots and lots of little blocks of armor when you're building something small grid in survival, so I'm hopeful we'll get some sort of teaser or get some sort of discussion from Keen about how they're thinking of approaching welding in survival, because it's just one of these things that's constantly in my head. I'm like, I don't want to have to weld up every single block, but I also don't want the blocks to instantly place like I'm playing creative mode. I love the visceral nature of building blocks in Space Engineers. The place down, the build, the frame, have it weld up in stages. That clunk is a really nice little bit of feedback that makes you feel connected to the thing you're putting together. It's a bit like the snap of two Lego pieces going together. Along the same sort of lines are the fact that we seemingly still have the 2.5 meter cubes and we have the 50 centimeter cubes. I feel like that was a really good decision because it's going to make it easier for us to get our first ship out the door. It's going to make us easier to put something together quickly than if we were only able to build in the tiny little blocks, because then it's very easy to get lost in those details. Honestly, that makes me really happy. I was really worried about that bit, and after having seen that, I'm like, okay, cool, I can build in this. I can build something fast, or I can build something detailed, or I can do both. And yeah, that's made me really happy. I'm itching to play with it to see if it really does feel that way, but at the moment, that gives me a lot of confidence that we're still going to be able to build like we're used to. The last little usability thing that made me quite happy to see was during the painting section. I'm also super happy that they've added the spray paint gun. Like, that should have been incorporated into the original game ages ago because it's just the best way to paint. But the fact that they've incorporated that from the outset, and the way you can tell which block you're pointing at. You can see in the section where they're showing the painting, there is a little circle that is applied to the surface of the block you're pointing at, so you know exactly what you're painting. My hope is that this isn't just a debug feature and that this is actually something that they're going to incorporate into the UI so that we can also see that when we're using a welder or a grinder, and we're going to be much more confident about what block we're dealing with when we're interacting with it using one of the tools. There's not much we can interpret from the videos about what engineering challenges and stuff that are going to be included, but it does seem that they've included the varied size of conveyor. I hope that they can come up with a nice, clear way of indicating what can go through what size. And I do quite like the idea of being able to have small conveyors running through my large grid bases, because there are rooms that don't need full conveyoring, but maybe you want to pressurize them, or maybe you want to have ammunition available to them, or med kits, or those sorts of smaller items that currently can pass through small conveyors, but you just need it beside the door and you don't want to have to run a full-size conveyor right next to it that's in the 2.5 meter cube size. Plus, they're really nice decorative elements. So just having small conveyors, they're nice for decoration in corridors and industrial spaces. And speaking of decorations, lighting. The lighting looks so nice. I remember seeing the original post that Jon made about some of the lighting and the number of lights and a bit of ray tracing and all this sort of stuff. I know a lot of people have issues with ray tracing, but the ray tracing isn't the point. The point is having a light that doesn't go through objects. Having a light that is actually properly, or at least close to properly, behaving with the environment. I am so looking forward to having better lighting. I would love to use spotlights for everything in Space Engineers, but it's unrealistic. It doesn't like it. I'm hopeful that we can have more lights and we can have better lights because of the new engine. And it certainly seems that way from some of the demonstrations that have been shown, like the stuff I'm showing you on screen right now. On top of the new engine, there's the new physics system, which is coming. We haven't seen anything about that, so I don't really want to talk about that because anything I would say is just pure speculation, and I'd rather actually see a bit more of it. But we have seen some of the damage stuff, which looks really cool for the non-deformable blocks. It's nice to have some sort of damage modeling for those, and I was initially concerned when I first saw that damage modeling where you have this fracturing of the non-deformable blocks. So I was like, oh no, are they going to take away the deforming of the armor blocks? No, you can clearly see that there's deformation of the armor blocks and there's fracturing of the non-deformable blocks. One thing I'm hopeful for once they start showing us some sort of survival elements is that when we repair blocks that have had some of that fracturing damage, I'm hopeful that the fracturing damage is not the block is now dead. Hopefully it can be a partial thing. But I'm hopeful that when we repair it, we then start with the build states of that block getting placed over the top or underneath the existing damaged part. So I'm hopeful they can find some way to keep both of those things so that we can have these sort of semi-repaired blocks. If we didn't quite have enough parts to repair it, you can see where the damage was, but you can also see where we tried to start repairing it, because that's going to make a ship feel really lived in. It's going to make a base feel like it's got a story to it as to why you didn't repair that part. And those little elements are the bits that really, really draw you into the world that you're building. So I talked a little bit about the interface we saw with the spray paint. The other bits we've seen of the interface seem very placeholder. There was a nice little element showing that it looks like we're going to be able to go 3 times as fast as we currently can, which is nice. But one thing I'm really hopeful for, and please, 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 Keen, give us this. Please give us lots of folders, or options for folders, or tree structures, or something to organize our blueprints, our subgrids, our blocks even within a singular grid. Give us groups the way we currently have them, but have these as well. We just, I need more organization of my gigantic grids so that I can find things, because I'm really bad at naming them and I want a better system. So yeah, hopefully we get that. I've not seen any suggestion we will, but I just wanted to put that out there because I really, really want it. But yeah, a big thing that a lot of people talk about when they're talking about what they were hoping for with the sequel was some mods that they want incorporated and things like that. There are loads of them, but the one that I wanted to talk about was build vision, because I think there's a way that it could be incorporated into the game in a way that makes sense. I reckon we need a tool, like a tablet or a scanner or something like that, even if it's like the wrist tablet that's on the original engineer's forearm, where you point it at a block. If your pseudo antenna is on and the grid that that block is on has an antenna, you can point it at a block and you can control everything that's in the control panel through that tablet. Because that would be perfect in-game world, and it would stop the space magic stuff that Build Vision has, but it would give you the functionality that Build Vision has. I hope that they're thinking about how to incorporate something like that. I'd love to hear about some of the other things that you guys have noticed in these videos. I'm obviously very excited for what's going to be coming. I'm excited even though I'm expecting it to be something quite small once we get some sort of reveal or access to this. But I'm still excited because it's hopefully going to be eventually space engineers, but built on foundations that know what space engineers became, not built on foundations that really didn't expect anything remotely like the game we ended up with. I'm itching to see what they'll reveal next week. I'm sure I'm not alone. So, as always, there's plenty more to come, and I will see you then.